Hey everybody, happy Thursday. It's not Friday, it's Thursday, Jeff. Let's just confuse everybody and do the broadcast on Thursday. No, why do we do that? Because we figured that Friday, when we planned this thing out last year, or the beginning of the year, we figured that everybody on Friday would be kind of winding down and moving on because of the holiday. And now, in retrospect, I don't know if that's accurate or not. What do you think, Jeff? I don't know. They may have just been finishing up Friday. I don't know. Who knows? Here we are. It's Thursday. For those of you joining us live, awesome. Thank you for doing so. Two Hills. Thank you for doing so. Delburn. Thank you for doing so. Rockyford. Thank you for doing so. Pincher. Panoka, Rimby. On and on and on. All across rural Alberta. And now, those of you joining us via archive, I welcome you as well. I got a neat little note from a lady from Panoka, I believe, who sent me a note a couple days ago saying, hey, Ian, just want to let you know I'm on the beaches of Hawaii with my iPad watching the video archive. Thank you so much for having it archived. My response, of course, is, don't you have better things to do to Hawaii than watching the Chubby Brown Man? I mean, you got to have better things to do. But thank you. I think that's awesome. And I know many of you will be watching over the holiday break. If you have a little bit of a break, you'll be catching up and so on and so forth. Got a great suggestion from a couple of you, and specifically from Coach and Pincher, my man Coach. I call him Coach. He gave me a cool hat. He said, hey, Ian, I'm having trouble keeping track of the videos that I've watched. I'm kind of watching everything via archive. And can you do me a favor? Can you get us a little thing on there so I can check off, or at least have it different colored when I've completed something? And I was like, yeah, that's a perfect idea. So we're already working on that. We're going to have it so, I don't know if it's going to be a checkbox or if there's going to be something where you can keep track of what you have done and what you haven't if you're watching via archive, which I thought was really, really cool. And as long as you keep your cookies, as long as you hold your cookies and don't clear your cache, then the computer will remember, Jeff. That's really cool. And Jeff as well, for all of you that were concerned from the last coaching session, Jeff is feeling a lot better. All right, what are we doing today? We're introducing the next competency of today's effective leader. But before we do that, I want to put something up at the bottom of the screen. Commitment.becomingacommunitybuilder.ca. Commitment.becomingacommunitybuilder.ca. The program is almost done. What? Yeah, I'm going to be in your community the first week of February. We're going to be handing out certificates. We're going to be celebrating people's achievement. Stay tuned for more details for your specific community and your specific location. That will be going out very, very shortly. And we're going to celebrate. And we're done. Beginning of April, or beginning of February, we're done. So now's the time for you to make your commitment. Through our financial support, my organization, The Changing Point, through local sponsors combined, you're able to take this program at no cost. And we thank those local sponsors. You saw them at the beginning of the program, or at the pre-roll. You saw their logos. Thank them for letting you have this for free forever. Thank us for letting you have it for free forever. Thank my wife for letting you have it for free forever. What's my point? We only ask for one thing. Make a commitment. Make a commitment to improve yourself, or make a commitment to improve your family, or make a commitment to do something within your neighborhood or within your community. Do something. See, the simple premise was this, that we're building rural Alberta one leader at a time. And that you, the 9 regions, were going to act as a lighthouse, a beacon of hope to other rural communities of what could happen when informal leaders equip themselves and make a decision that they would commit to improve at least one thing. We have close to 1,000 people participating. Imagine if 1,000 people committed to picking out one thing and being a little bit better at it, and then dedicated to themselves to that improvement in themselves, in their family, in their neighborhood, in their community. The cumulative effect of that, a better Alberta. You know it and I know it. You got to make a commitment. I'll be honest with you. I am disappointed in the number of commitments that have come in. Now, maybe it's the holiday season, or maybe it's this, or maybe it's that. I don't know what it is, but people better start making their commitments. Otherwise, this whole thing is a waste of time. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you always got. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So if we want tomorrow to be better than yesterday, then we've got to be willing to commit. Yeah, but Ian, I'm doing a great job. What do you want from me? If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. Now, I'm not saying you're sick, but you don't need to be sick to get better. The whole strategy here was try to provide information, try to provide some education, hopefully try to provide a little bit of inspiration, a kick in the bum, if you will, and everybody pick out one thing. Now, I'll tell you, the commitments that have come in have been pretty profound, frankly. We got people starting scholarships and bursaries. We got people committing to do things within their neighborhoods and communities. We got people, and I think these are the ones that are most impressive to me, to make decisions to spend more time with kids, their own, with spouses, their own. Let's not make commitments to spend more time with other people's spouses. Just side note. Let's not do that. Right? But people, I mean, the commitments that have come in have been thoughtful. So maybe that's what it is. You're thoughtfully considering. Now, somebody sent me a note the other day and said, there's so many things, I don't know which one to pick. Well, hold on. So you're picking none? What? All right. You're going to see that come up over and over again. And for the next how many ever weeks till we finish up, you're going to hear me banging the drum. Make a commitment. Because all of this is a waste of time if we don't make a commitment. All right. Today, the next competency of today's effective leader, catalyst for responsibility. Catalyst for responsibility. When I started getting involved in community, when I started coming up the ranks as a professional, I found that I worked for a very, very, very wealthy family, and I helped run a big hotel casino for them. And they were on a bunch of boards. And then as they started to really elevate and get beyond wanting to do that kind of stuff, they put me in. So all of a sudden I found myself being on these boards of directors of these highfalutin organizations, and I was like half the age of the other people on the board. I was like 25 years old, and I'm on the board with all these people that are well-heeled professionals, and I'm a kid. But I'm standing in for a family member of this really, really, really wealthy family. I'm standing in for them. I'm kind of like their surrogate. I'm filling their spot on this board. And I started to get involved in community. And whether that was the United Way, or whether that was the Salvation Army, or whether that was this thing or that thing, you know, all of a sudden I found myself on these boards, highfalutin boards. And I started to get a sense of community and giving of myself for community. And I found that that was really boring. Because, you know, it was really boring. I'm just rubber stamping. I'm just on this board. Now, I'm nothing against boards, but it just wasn't satisfying for me. Because I just sat there and the executive director talked and we sat in the meeting and we didn't do anything. We didn't get anything done. We just rubber stamped. It was just like we showed up once a month, got these minutes, approved the minutes. Community. And then I walked the street with the city's homeless. No, I did. You can Google it. I lived 4 days on the street as a homeless man, undercover, because I wanted to learn more about the homeless problem. And I went into a motel room and I saw a little boy try to take socks off of his feet. He had worn the same socks so long that it stuck to his feet. Then I heard the pain of a girl tell me how she was put outside of her hotel room while her mother was doing her business as a prostitute. And then I started to understand that I had a responsibility. And that if there were hungry kids in my town, I had a responsibility. And if there was women being beaten in my town, I had a responsibility. And if I had people that were going through challenges and difficulties of drugs and alcohol, I had a responsibility. That I was my brother's keeper. Because I had been given much. I didn't deserve much, but I had been given much. And because I had been given much, much was expected of me. So I realized that serving on these boards, I had a responsibility to build a better community. Well, then I decided to figure it out. I said, well, what does it take to build a good community? Now, I'm not the sharpest pencil in the box, not the brightest bulb in the chandelier, certainly not the sharpest tool in the tool shed. As most of you know, I do not possess a college or university education. Just a regular guy. Just a squirrel trying to get a nut, as we'd say in my old neighborhood. Squirrel trying to get a nut. So I set out to figure out what did it take to build a great community. Because now all of a sudden I was thrust into community leadership. All of a sudden I had more than I could have ever hoped to have. All of a sudden people were listening to what I had to say. Well, I better figure it out. So I started searching. I started looking through history. What does it take to build a great community? What does it take to build a great community? What were the great communities of history? And I stumbled on a place that historians over and over and over again, historians were saying, hey, check out Athens. Check out Athens. Check out Athens. The golden age of the greatest city-state in the history of mankind, historians said. Check out Athens. So this Athens of ancient Greece, Peloponnesia, this Athens. And most historians said that it was the greatest city-state in the history of mankind. I came to find that it was the birthplace of democracy. They defined history by saying that people could determine their destiny, not kings. They said that people could rise up and make decisions, not just the king. They said that people could run the community. You see, Athens was the first place to ever try a true democracy, where every citizen had a say. Athens. Athens was the birthplace of arts as we know it. Athens was the birthplace of geometry. Athens. Side note, I believe that Alberta has the ability in the 21st century to be the Athens of today. I believe that Alberta could define what community could be like. I think that Alberta could be the Athens of the 21st century. You'll see why I think that in a moment. Athens. And I said, whoa, Athens. Okay. This Athens thing. Well, how did Athens get so great? Why was Athens the ideal? What did they do so that I can learn that and go do it in my community? And then I came across the writings of one man, Pericles. Pericles was the Athenian leader. You see him on the screen there. Pericles was the Athenian leader during the 30 years of the golden age of Athens. And listen what Pericles said. And I swear to you, just like Archimedes, I swear to you, I believe that Pericles was speaking directly to me. Ian, you take us on these history lessons, and sometimes I can't figure out where you're going. Just wait, you'll see it. As I was reading about Athens, and I was reading about the leader, Pericles, I came across this quote. If Athens would appear great to you, then consider that her glories were purchased by valiant men who understood their responsibilities and acted on their duty. Ooh. It hit me like a ton of bricks. It was clear as clear could be. Pericles was talking to me directly. And what he was saying to me was, in your quest to find out what it takes to build a great community, know this. If you find our community to be great, if you think we defined history, if you think we were special, and stop and think about it, man, we still refer to Athens 2 millennia later, we still refer to Athens, and so much of what Western society is today comes directly from those Athenians. He said, if you think Athens is great, then know this, purchased by valiant men who understood their responsibility and acted on their duty. Crystal clear it was to me. Citizens who understood their responsibility and acted on their duty. That was it. That they had hundreds of thousands of citizens that understood what they were supposed to do and did it as citizens. Listen what the historian Kagan writes about Pericles. Pericles was one of those extraordinary people who placed his own stamp on his time and shaped the course of history. He was a leading citizen of a great democracy, and he had a keen sense of its own special role in history and the special excellence of its constitution and way of life. It had a booming economy, Alberta. It had a booming economy producing wealth and prosperity previously unknown. Sound familiar? The life of Pericles and the democratic society he led indeed have much to teach the citizens of free lands in our own time. Pericles possessed no great fortune. Take note, Pericles possessed no great fortune. The citizen of a democratic republic, he held no office higher than that of general, one of 10. So not general in military terms, but on a council, none of whom had greater formal powers than any other. Unlike the prime ministers of our modern representative democracies, he had no well-established, well-organized political machinery on which he could rely. Pericles also sponsored great outbursts of artistic and intellectual activity. It was his idea to put the buildings on the top of the Acropolis. Check out that. Look at that. The buildings on the top of the Acropolis. Show us that other picture, Jeff. The buildings on the top of the Acropolis. You've seen that. Did you know that? Did you know that that picture is representative of buildings that were built by regular citizens? The first public works project. The first public works project. He taught regular citizens how to do craftsmanship, and they built those buildings, and they still stand today. Still stand today. Regular citizens. He commissioned the first city planner. His patronage of the arts, his encouragement of thinkers and activities made Athens a magnet that drew to it leading creative talents from the entire Greek world. Now listen to this. 2 millennia after Athenians lived, we still marvel at what they achieved. But the visible remains, impressive as they are, do not constitute their important legacy. Pericles confronted the problem that faces any free and democratic society. How do we get citizens to buy in? How do we get citizens to give their time, talent, and treasure? How do we get citizens off their big fat couch? You thought I was going to say something else. How do we get them to turn off Canadian Idol and turn off Hockey Night in Canada and get involved in community? Sound familiar? He was in a highly prosperous society, but he had to get Athenians involved. Why? Because he knew if Athens would appear great to you, then consider that her glories were purchased by valiant men who understood their responsibility and acted on their duty. He got it. He understood it. He's like looking around going, hey, you know what? Athens is going to suck if I can't figure out how to get all these people to stop worrying about their prosperity and start getting involved in the community. Isn't that crazy, Jeff? Now listen to this. This is going to sound familiar as well. Free society, how citizens be persuaded to make sacrifices necessary for its success. We face that same challenge. Tyrants and dictators can rely on mercenaries and compulsion to defend their states. Rare states like Sparta. Remember Sparta? Everybody celebrates Sparta? Well, here's the funny thing about Sparta. They forced you to give your all. But democracies cannot use such devices. Instead, democratic leadership involves a freer kind of public education. Pericles sought to teach the Athenians that their own interests were aligned and tied together with those of their community, and could only secure prosperity when they had a prosperous society, that the prosperity of the individual was linked to the prosperity of the society. And for society to prosper, individuals must be willing to give their time, talent, and treasure. Pericles got it, and he summed it up by saying, get people to understand their responsibility and act on their duty. Pericles he understood that the individual could not prosper unless the state was secure and prosperous. And the state could not be prosperous unless the individual was prosperous. Pericles tried to shape a new kind of society, a new kind of citizen, not by the use of force or terror, but by the power of his ideas, the strength of his personality, the use of reason, and the genius of his unique rhetoric. Pericles was the first community builder. Pericles inspired me that night as I read about him, because it made me realize, wait a minute, why am I doing all this fundraising? Why am I trying to start all these programs? Why am I starting to, what am I doing? Why am I trying to raise $7 million to open a school for homeless kids? The key is building responsibility and citizenry. Stop and think about this. What if every man in Canada, now don't send me emails about being a sexist, just listen for a second. What if every man in Canada was responsible in every truest sense of the word for every child they fathered? Stop and think about that. What if every man in Canada was responsible in the truest sense of the word for every kid they fathered? They were a good father and provided money and time and energy and effort and raised up good citizens. What if every dad did that? Do you think social services costs would go down? Of course. Do you think we would have more money for other things? Of course. What if every citizen in your town acted on their responsibility and their duty? Not just by, and I said this the last time we were together, not just by being a ratepayer or a taxpayer, but by being a citizen. Now what's funny is we used to understand that, because community participation was obligatory. Obligatory. Community participation was obligatory. I understood that I would die if I didn't help you to some degree and you didn't help me. Best example, the barn raising, right? The barn raising. We came together to help one another, the barn raising. Well, sometimes in prosperous societies, we forget that. Athens, no different than today in Alberta, Canada, or in Western society. I think I don't need to give my time, talent, and treasure. So it's gone from being obligatory to being this. Prove it to me. Prove to me that your thing is worth my time, talent, and treasure. Prove to me that I should get involved in community. Now, for some of you, you're still recruiting on an obligatory mindset. Well, don't you understand? You need to be involved in community. Well, no, I don't. You build me a town to live in. It's your job. I pay my taxes. Hey, Pericles was clear. Free society can't work like that. And what's amazing to me is it became very practical. So not only did I need to get every citizen to understand their responsibility, I need to get all my employees to understand their responsibility. You know what I immediately did? I immediately looked at the way we were organizing. You know, in some instances, we had one supervisor supervising 3 people. Think about that. I had one guy supervising 3 people. What? That's crazy. How about just pay those 3 people a little bit more money, increase their responsibility and sense of ownership, give them the tools that they need to succeed, and we could eliminate one level of management. Oh, yeah, trying to get rid of people. No, I'm not trying to get rid of anybody. I'm trying to give freedom to those line employees. Pay them more. Pay them more. If I could get them to understand their responsibility, act on their duty, the simplicity of it was this: if I could get the maid to take ownership of that room and not need to be checked, not need to have somebody hovering over her, could we be more efficient, more effective? Could she have a more pleasant workplace? And could we save money and bring more money to the bottom line? Yes. And that's when I realized it. The key is helping people understand their responsibility and act on their duty. In business, in nonprofit, and in the community, and in my family. If I can get my little girls to understand their responsibility and act on their duty, life's a lot better. Pericles was right. So that's the next competency of today's effective leader. How do I get other people to understand their responsibility and act on their duty? But much like Pericles, I can't force them today to do that. I can't intimidate them to do that. I can't bark at them to do that. I can't scream at them to do that. I can't shout at them to do that. I can't go thumping people on the head to get them to understand their responsibility and act on their duty. I have to use a different technique, just like Pericles realized he had to use a different approach. He couldn't use the approach of Sparta. He used a different approach. Pericles of Athens teaches us today. Today's effective leader understands and places a priority on engaging and cultivating ownership and responsibility in others. Cultivating ownership and responsibility in others. If you're an elected official right now, do you have strategies to get people to take ownership of their town? Proactively and holistically, strategies to get people to take ownership in their town. To get people to clean up their front yard on their own without a bylaw. You're not going to be able to bylaw people into cleaning their front yard. Can you get people to give philanthropically? You can't legislate that. But what if everybody in town was 10% more philanthropic in 2014 than they were in 2013? With their time, with their talent, with their treasure. Think about the community impact of that. In a free society, we have to cultivate a sense of ownership and responsibility. If you're a business owner, you got 3 employees, what if you could cultivate a sense of ownership and responsibility in those 3 employees, and they took 10% more ownership than they did the year before? And what I mean by ownership is they were responsible for their actions. They come up with innovative and creative ideas. They acted like it was their own place. Would you be more profitable, Jeff? You'd be more profitable. Today's effective leader gets this. So we're going to do the survey. We're going to go through it really, really quick. And then I'm going to give you some ways that you can be a catalyst for responsibility. I believe I have a responsibility to my family, employees, organization, and community. See, that was the epiphany for me. The day I realized that my town was a reflection of me, which then grew to my nation was a reflection of me, which then grew to North America as a reflection of me, which then grew to my world as a reflection of me. Now, I'm not saying you got to have that. I'm just saying the day you really wake up and go, damn it, my town's a reflection of me, it creates a significant sense of urgency. I believe that others are capable and have the right to make decisions that affect their situation. Why is that so important? Because as soon as I realize that everybody around me should be able to have a say, I'm more likely to create systems and processes that allows them to do so. As soon as I believe that everyone has a voice and has something to offer and should be expected to offer it, I'll create systems and processes to allow them to do so. I'm just going to skip through these. You do them on your own. I understand that pride is a powerful form of human capital. I'm going to give you a very specific way to utilize the second most powerful form of human capital there is. The first, love. The second, pride. When there's pride in a neighborhood, you can feel it. When there's pride in a town, you can feel it. Just driving in the town, you can feel pride. When there's pride in a business, you can feel it. When there's a pride in a sports team, you can feel it. Well, what if we were able to cultivate and deploy that incredibly powerful form of human capital, pride, in a strategic and intentional way? I have a system for communicating what winning is to the groups I lead. I understand how to gain buy-in. I have effective tools to mobilize human resources to get things done. All right. Responsibility. Now, I got 33 minutes to expose you to 3 key pieces of being a catalyst for responsibility. But do not come off of the original premise. How do I get another human being to take greater responsibility and then act on their duty than they did the day before? Pericles. If Athens would appear great to you, consider that her glories were purchased by valiant men who understood their responsibility, acted on their duty. If you think I had a great town to live in, then do those 2 things. Cultivate responsibility, get people to act. Cultivate responsibility, get people to act. Cultivate responsibility, get people to act, period. And then get the hell out of their way and let them go build a city or a town or a hamlet or a county or a nation. Where does it begin? It begins in you. It begins in you. Individual responsibility and collective accountability. I must be individually responsible. I call it the 10-foot rule. If it's within 10 feet of me, I'm responsible for it. Something on the ground, within 10 feet of me, I pick it up, throw it in the garbage. If it's within 10 feet of me, I'm responsible for it. It's called the 10-foot rule. You know who utilizes that? The Four Seasons hotels. The Four Seasons hotels say to their employees, if it's within 10 feet of you, you're responsible for it. You want to know why they have some of the finest hotels in the world? Because every employee takes that stance. If it's within 10 feet of me, not whether it's within my job description, not whether it's within my purview or my pay scale, just if it's within 10 feet of me, I handle it. How cool is that, Jeff? That's why when you go there, you have a phenomenal experience. That's why consistently you go to Four Seasons hotels anywhere in the world, Hong Kong, Vancouver, it doesn't matter. Down in the States, doesn't matter. You go to Four Seasons, it's going to be great. 10-foot rule. Individual responsibility. But collectively we are accountable. Now what does that mean? That means history will judge the citizens of Alberta who live in this time. Just like the citizens of Athens during the 30 years. History has judged and found them to be what? Damn good. So how will history judge us, Albertans? How will history judge us during this golden age of incredible prosperity, the likes of which most are never have the opportunity to experience? Well, what are you talking about? I don't know, 97% of the world today does not experience the prosperity that Alberta is experiencing today. Maybe 94%, maybe 97 is a stretch. But you tell that guy in the Sudan, I mean, even the poorest are better off than the guy in the Sudan or in Somalia or whatever. So what history will judge. So we are collectively accountable for what we produce, what we create, and the legacy we leave behind. Individual responsibility starts with that. And being a catalyst for responsibility starts with that. Because I'm not going to follow the guy, or I'm not going to follow the gal, I'm not going to give my time, talent, and treasure to the guy or gal that is irresponsible. I'm not going to give my all to the guy or gal that's a yahoo. So it does begin with this. Now check this out. We tend to judge ourselves on our intentions, and we tend to judge others on their actions. Every day I judge Gina Hill on her action. Every day. Every day. Where are my underwear? That's what I said this morning. Where is my underwear? Right now, all of you women are like, get your own damn underwear, brother. Really? Where's my underwear? But when Gina looks at me and says, how come the light bulb's not changed? How come I'm taking out the garbage? How come the towel rack that the kids broke a year ago is still not fixed? How come all those things? You know what my response is? Honey, I'm busting my ass here, okay? I'm working my tail off. I intended to do that. I've just been too busy. Where's my underwear? Hey, cut me some slack. I'm really busy. Towel rack? I'm trying to save the world here. I don't have time to put up the towel rack. Isn't that funny? I judge her on her performance. I judge myself on my intention. In 2014, I must commit to judging myself on my performance in my home, not on my intention, if I want to keep a sane wife. Why am I telling you this? It's my commitment. It's right there on the screen. I'm openly committing that I will perform better in my responsibilities as the handyman of my home. Right? There you go, honey. Are you happy now? I've got 1,000 people to hold me accountable. So you could call this intention, judge, action. You know what you could call it? Authenticity. See, authenticity. There's a lot of talk about authentic leadership today. Authentic leadership is no gap or minimal gap between principle and practice. Minimal gap between principle and practice. If you want to be an authentic leader, then make sure you have a minimal gap between principle and practice. That more days than not, more weeks than not, more months than not, you are what you say you are. So the first step in that, defining what you are. So if you haven't in a long time, or if you never have established a code of conduct for yourself, here's a great opportunity. A system of principles and values and standards of behavior that will guide what you say and do. And then let the world know it. Not let the world know it in your lip service, let the world know it in your actions. So here's a simple exercise that you don't necessarily need to do right now, but I would strongly encourage you to do it as you prepare for 2014. What are 3 values I hold dear? And how would people see it in their day? In your day. If you hold honesty dear, you can't tell a lie beside somebody's back. If you hold integrity dear, you can't be taking pencils and pens from your workplace. If you hold hard work dear, you can't be figuring out ways to get out hard work. So what are those 3 things that you value? And then how will people see it? This is called asset-based intentional action. Here's what I plan to be, and here's how you're going to see that every day. How about this? What are 3 things coworkers can coworkers, board members, family members, stakeholders, whoever, can absolutely expect from me? A smart-ass remark? To be 5 minutes late? Like here's what I guarantee you. If you were to talk to people that work with me, here's what they would say to you. They would say, you can absolutely guarantee Ian's going to be 5 minutes late. Because he's on a call or he's doing whatever, or he's trying to save the world, he might be late. That's something I got to get better at. Okay, what people absolutely guarantee from you? And it's not always positive. What are those 3 things? But why don't you write down the 3 things that they can absolutely guarantee and then intentionally walk that out? What are 3 things you will absolutely not tolerate in yourself and from yourself? Remember, that's that intention action thing. Well, it's funny. Those 9 responses, what do they become? Your code of conduct. So for 2014, 9 answers, code of conduct. And then try more days than not, more weeks than not, more months than not to be that. Why? Because we desperately long for authentic leaders today, because so many are not. We desperately long for people that we can kind of count on what we're going to get from them. We desperately long for leaders who are what they say they are, and that there's no gap between principle and practice. I dropped a pen. Hold on, I got to pick this up. Ah! I'm back. We talk about the arrows, right? We talk about the arrows. Right? You know how to get these arrows going like that? The arrow that is this way, this way, that way? Give people a reason. What? Why should anybody let you lead them? Why should anybody give you their time, their talent, their treasure? Why? Why should they align their arrow with you and where you want to take things? And the you might be you individually or you collectively. You see, if you're one of those people out there trying to get the dark line going in a certain direction, you better ask yourself, why should this arrow follow you? Pericles was compelling. Pericles was something special. And so people aligned with him. Now, I'm not saying you have to be the individual on the white horse. I'm not saying you have to be able to speak eloquently. I'm saying today, actually, it's better not to be a big talker. I'm saying all you need to do is act out who you say you are. Just be that authentic leader. And guess what? Arrows will get in alignment with you. Arrows will get in alignment with you. Okay. So I strongly encourage you. Think about this code of conduct. What are you? Who are you? And how would people see it regularly? Turn the page. If you're going to be a catalyst for responsibility, then you know how to get people to buy in. Pericles knew how to get people to buy in. Now, I don't know where he learned that. I've done a significant research on his life. And the writings of Themistocles or Demosthenes or whatever the hell his name is, Demosthenes and blah, 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 and all the knees guys. Themistocles, right? And in reading Themistocles, and you read about Pericles' early life and then his political life and his community life, I'm not exactly sure how he got people to buy in. I don't know how he understood the techniques of getting people to buy in. So I started doing a bunch of research, and I came across the writings of a guy named Dr. Ludwig out of the University of Texas down in the States. And Dr. Ludwig said, if I was going to get another human being or a group of human beings to buy into something, there were 3 key elements. Now look, if you're a business owner, if you're a board member, if you're a community activist, if you're just a senior with a burr in your butt, whatever, your bum, because you want to get something done, you got to understand this. Especially today. How am I going to get people to buy in? It's no longer obligatory, so don't try that. Don't try saying to them, but you have an obligation to help. That won't go anywhere. I don't like that. Well, tough. I'm just telling you, it won't go anywhere. If I want to get someone to buy in today, I must be strategic about it. I must be intentional about it. So you're an authentic leader because you have a code of conduct. More days than not, more weeks than not, more months than not, you are what you say you are through that code of conduct exercise, through your faith, through your whatever. I don't care. Just be that authentic leader. And then have a strategy to get people to buy in. Now, I call it the 3 questions. The 3-question buy-in strategy that Dr. Ludwig taught me. Oh, you met him? No, I never met him. I just read his stuff. He taught it to me. And he said this. He said that the 3 key pieces of buy-in were this. If a person thinks it's relevant, if a person thinks it will have an impact, positive or negative, on them, and if a person thinks it's of quality, they'll buy in. Relevance. Why doesn't the person get off their couch while they're watching Hockey Night in Canada to come down to the public meeting? Because it's not relevant. Until you tell them this, until you tell them you're closing the school and going to bus their kid in the dark home or to school and back in the dark in the town down the road. As soon as you tell them that, oh, they show up. Because all of a sudden it becomes relevant. Now maybe the only reason it's relevant is because they're going to have to take the kid to the bus stop in the dark. Right? But for some reason, all of a sudden it became relevant. People don't get off their big fat couch today unless they can see in a dark line how it's relevant to them personally. Oh, well, so what does that mean? That means before I ever roll anything out, before I ask other people to get involved, I have to ask myself, why will they think it's relevant to them? What words will I use? What facts will I use? What stories or anecdotal information will I use? How will I show them the relevancy? And remember, you're going to have to walk to their side of the fence. Somebody said to me on the other day on the phone, well, the people in my town need to understand. The hell they do. The people in my town need to understand. No, you need to figure out a way to explain it so they will. You need to be able to tell the story well enough that they do get it, the relevancy to them. If they're not giving their time, talent, and treasure, it's not on them. It's on your inability to show its relevance. Or how about this? Impact. Can you show the impact on them? Like, you can't go out and recruit volunteers by saying it's the right thing to do. People are going to look back at you and go, no, actually the right thing to do is to get on my quad. No, the right thing to do is go do a little skiing up in Banff. No, the right thing to do is fly down to Vegas. That's the right thing to do because that's me. Because remember, we're in a selfie generation. How do I make myself happy? How do I fulfill myself? Now, I'm making a value judgment. I'm just saying we're in a selfie society. So I've got to be able to show the impact to that human being of either their actions, positive consequences, or their inaction, negative consequences. If I can't, before I begin, remember, it's before I begin, if I can't answer that question, how will we show impact? Then don't do it. You're never going to get buy-in. And then finally, quality. Now, this is a tough one. People are not going to align with something that's crappy. So if your arrow, you personally, or the things that you've done in the community are crappy, if the perception is that you're not very good at stuff, then who the hell is going to align with that? People are only going to align with things of quality. People are only going to align with things of quality. People don't want to be around a loser. They want to be around a winner. Now, here's the funny thing. You don't always have to be successful at things. But if your quality of your organization or your personal brand is a little tarnished, that's okay. As long as you openly admit it and then tell everybody the corrective action that you've taken. Hey everybody, I know in the past when we did X, Y, and Z, it wasn't so great. But here's what we've done to change that. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Think about it. When you've gone down to wherever, the local grocer or whatever, Canada Post, whatever, and you've seen a flyer, logos at the bottom of the flyer have made you either say, oh, that's going to be a great event, because they always do great stuff. Or logo at the bottom of the flyer made you go, well, that's going to be no good. They always do bad stuff. Or at minimum, it's this, eh. If the response to your logo is, eh, then you have a quality perception issue, and people probably won't buy in to the cool new thing you want to do. Why? Because people don't want to be with a loser, they want to be with a winner. So you must ask yourself these questions before you try to roll anything out. And whether it's on a board of directors, whether it's in your organization, I'm going to roll something out to the employees. How will we prove to them it's relevant? How will we prove to them the impact? How do we prove to them the quality? Or if you're a municipal leader and you've got municipal staff and you want to roll out a new software package, guess what? They're all going to cross their arms like this. I don't want to do that. I don't see the relevancy. It's just going to create more work. I don't see the impact. It's just going to make it harder for me. And the last time we rolled something out, it was a nightmare for a year. And then you wonder why they don't buy in, Jeff. They don't buy in for what I just described. So you've got to go back and create a strategy that will show the impact, show the relevancy, show the quality. Now, check this out. So one, if I want to go get buy-in, I ask myself the buy-in questions before I ever begin. 2, I understand the stakeholder, their needs, their wants, their desires, their goals, their concerns. In other words, their motivations. How do I do that? Refer to the agent of change, 100 cups of coffee strategy. What is my messaging? Before I ever go try to get anybody to buy in, what's my messaging? How will I explain that the thing I want to do is in alignment with their motivations? Well, if I go have those 100 cups of coffee, I'm more likely to be able to accomplish that. Think about it. The 100 cup of coffee strategy, where I go and I listen 80% of the time, talk 20. I understand the other person's needs, wants, desires, hopes, and aspirations. Then I ask myself the relevancy question. Well, how can I prove that it's relevant? How can I prove the buy-in questions? I'm sorry. How do I prove that it's relevant? How do I prove that it's quality? How do I prove the impact? Based on understanding them now, how do I craft my messaging accordingly to come into alignment with them instead of trying to convince them to come in alignment with me? See, I'm trying to come in the most that I can to come in alignment with them. Then I ask myself this: what's my desired outcome from that conversation? How can I say it? When should I say it? Where should I say it? Should I say it over a cup of coffee? Should I say it in a public meeting? What could the potential reaction be? And then I even visualize that conversation. Why? Because you and I both know if I can't get buy-in, I'm screwed. I'm not going to be able to do it. The people of my town need to understand. They ain't gonna, brother. So you better come up with a buy-in strategy. What conduit of communication is most trusted by the stakeholder group, which I would like to send the message to or communicate the message with? What do you mean conduit? If you had an opportunity, watch that video in the portal on communication. Because the right conduit to communicate with is key. In Pericles' time, the conduit was the public assembly. Show that picture of the public assembly where they're all sitting there. In Pericles' time, it was the public assembly. Literally, thousands of people came together every day to make decisions on the community because it was a true democracy. Every land-holding male, sorry ladies, every land-holding male could vote. So you literally have 8,000 and 10,000 people voting. So you had to, that was the conduit. The assembly was the conduit. But today you have multiple conduits. You have the face-to-face conduit. You have the virtual conduit, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and the like. You have the written conduit, a flyer, a brochure. And then you sometimes even have the nonverbal conduit to send a message. So before I want to go get buy-in with a certain stakeholder group, I ask myself, what's their most trusted conduit of communication? So in other words, if I want to penetrate the high school and I want to get buy-in from high school kids, I'm never going to send out an 8.5 by 11 flyer. Never. Why? Because that's not how they communicate with each other. It's not the trusted conduit of communication. Instant message, Facebook, Twitter is probably a more trusted conduit of communication. You want to engage high school kids, then just say this. Just ask yourself this. How do they announce the party that's happening on Friday night that they don't want any adults to know about? Whatever that conduit of communication is, get your message in that conduit. Or how about seniors? Well, I'm probably not going to utilize Twitter to engage seniors. What am I probably going to do? I'm going to go to the Burger Palace. The community where the Burger Palace is, you know who I'm talking about. Or whatever that place is that the same 20 guys have been going to for 30 years. That's the trusted conduit of communication. 5, I must check for understanding. Remember, we talked about using the chat. 80% of the listening, 20% of the talking. So what mechanisms do you have to let people give you feedback? We heard your concerns and we changed. We heard your feedback and we changed. How often are we hearing that from companies today? Why? Because they're trying to get you to buy in. Oh, they listened to me. That was those 3 questions I gave you. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Suggestions for my improvement. If you could send me back to school, what class would you make me take? You're trying to get buy-in from people by allowing them to give feedback. You see there I listed some barriers to that communication. Don't finish people's sentences. Don't answer questions with questions. Beware of the biases that you bring. We all have them. Never daydream or become preoccupied with things when people are trying to talk to you. Why? Because it becomes a barrier to buy-in. As soon as someone feels like you don't understand them, barrier to buy-in. As soon as people think you understand them, they are more likely to buy in. That's why we listen like they're going to die at midnight. Because I know I'm going to get their buy-in more likely. And then they'll understand their responsibility and act on their duty. Stop and think about this. If I could get 50 people in the town that I lived in to understand their responsibility and act on their duty 10% more in 2014 than they did in 2013, would the town be a better place, Jeff, yes or no? I don't even need 1,000 people. I need 50. If I can just get 50 people on fire, something great's going to happen. If I can get 50 people to align, something great's going to happen. Why? Because history proves that out over and over again. So buy-in is critical. Effect. Did I get the buy-in I sought? Did I reach my intended outcomes? That implies that I knew what I was trying to affect before I began. Now, all of this little questions, just take this piece of paper and ask yourself these questions before you begin the activity. Ask yourself these questions before you roll out the initiative. Ask yourself these questions before you go to try to sell your thing to the public, or sell the thing to your employees, or sell the thing to your board of directors. It's very sequential. Just follow the pattern, the system. And you know what will happen? You'll gain greater and greater buy-in. And you know what that will lead to? People understanding their responsibility and acting on their duty. Pericles was a master of gaining buy-in. And as he gained buy-in, people went and did. As he gained buy-in, people created the greatest city-state in the history of mankind. And what were they buying into? Something very compelling. An idea that they could lead themselves. Whew, that's compelling. Yeah, and he showed the impact of it, the quality of it, and the relevance of it. And he succeeded. So do this proactively. Ask yourself these questions proactively. Go through this proactively. And as you've done it over and over and over again, it'll become a part of the 80% of your unconscious behavior. So code of conduct, buy-in strategy, and then final component, pride. Pride. Now, not today, but in our coaching session, I'm going to walk you through this diagram. I'm going to walk you through that diagram of how do I build pride. How do I build pride in a human being? Not arrogance, but pride. Pride is an intangible force that drives human capital unlike any other. Investing time and energy into building pride, both organizationally and individually or in our communities, will provide greater dividends than any other tool in a leader's toolkit. Building organizational pride leads to higher morale, increased participation in problem solving, a sense of ownership that creates the department or the organization as a reflection of me, attitude. Building individual pride leads to exceeded job expectations, greater ownership of the employee's specific task, and the employee regularly innovates and we have a less stressful workplace. The challenge is, how do I instill pride, use it, and maximize its benefits throughout the organization and the community? See, I'm going to give you a way to build pride within individuals. I'm going to give you a way to build pride within organizations, and I'm going to give you a way to build pride in the community. Because when there's pride in a community, people watch their kids. When there's pride in a community, people clean their yards. When there's pride in a community, people give their best at work. The storefront is clean. When there's pride. The challenge is that most of us don't have an intentional, holistic strategy for building pride. And as you can see, when we have the coaching session, I'll walk you through those bullet points of how to do it. And I even gave you a schematic of how to do it. Pride. Somehow Pericles got the Athenians to take pride in being an Athenian, the city they loved. How do I know that to be true? Because on one day, on a place called Marathon, there was an incredible battle that occurred. The Persians were coming to take over Athens. A bunch of farmers went out to fight them. The Persian fighting force was the greatest fighting force in the history of mankind up until that time. Historians say, that the arrows of the Persians were so thick, so many of them, that they block the sun. But somehow, a bunch of Hippolytes, farmers, volunteer soldiers, went out and they defended Athens on the battlefield of Marathon, and they won the day. Then one guy ran 26 miles back to Athens. He came to the assembly and collapsed, and he said, "We've won the day," and he died. That's why that race at the end of the Olympics that you have in different communities and we have in different communities, we all have in different communities, called the Marathon, that's why it has its name, from the battlefield of Marathon. What's your point? The Athenians had pride in their city, so they gave their all to the city. They loved Athens. What if we had a way to do that in our town? What if we could create that kind of energy and excitement around our town and took pride in our town? In the past, the institutions that did that were firmly in place. Family, faith-based organizations, paternal and fraternal organizations, and service clubs. The challenge is, those are fractionalized at best. In addition, we had greater alignment because we looked like each other, talked like each other, ate like what each other ate. We came from the same tribe or clan. Those days are gone. So we must now have strategies as elected officials to build pride. We must have strategies as informal leaders to build pride. We must have strategies as business owners to build pride, both organizationally and individually. We must have strategies as volunteer leaders to build pride. Why? Because it's an incredibly powerful form of human capital that, when aligned, can do great things. Pericles. He taught us that with a personal code of conduct, we're more likely to get people to understand the responsibility and act on their duty. He taught us that we must have a proactive, holistic strategy for creating buy-in, which we talked about today. And he taught us that community pride, organizational pride, individual pride, when deployed strategically and holistically, could create the greatest city-state in the history of mankind. Now, because of the holidays, we're going to extend what's normally 3 weeks. So there'll be some time during the holiday when you won't hear from us because we're all taking holiday. And there'll be time when you are. But we're going to unpack this, as we always do. Now, I hope that you'll take this in and realize that you can be Pericles and I can be Pericles because we can all be community builders. Pericles was just a community builder. And then finally, I hope that you'll thoughtfully consider that Alberta can be the Athens of the 21st century because of the incredible prosperity and potential thereof for 2 and 3 generations. Because there's talent coming from all over the world. Great talent already resides and great talent coming from all over the world. Because you have a track record of doing things that have never been done before since your beginning. You have a rugged individualism, a find a way, make a way attitude in the DNA of Alberta. And for whatever reason, the stars have aligned. And the word Alberta is on so many people's lips across the globe. What does that provide you the opportunity to do? Create the Athens of the 21st century. And history will judge you on what you do with this opportunity. It's not the premier's job. It's not the CEO's job. No, it's your job and my job. It's our job to build something special. How do we do that? Be a catalyst for responsibility. Have a personal code of conduct. Make sure that we know how to get buy-in from others, not by thumping them on the head, not by beating them, but trying to gain alignment with them, and then have a strategy for pride. We'll unpack it in between the holidays over the next few weeks. Don't forget to make your commitment. Thank you for being a part of the program, and happy holidays and Merry Christmas. See you later.